In today's tale from the shadows, a couple on a weekend retreat find themselves lost in the countryside and have a devil of a time finding their way back. Do enjoy. Amidst the tranquil countryside of Norfolk, under a canopy of stars, Michael and Sarah's car glided along the serpentine roads, the couple escaping the city's bustle for a weekend retreat, their laughter mingling with the soft hum of the engine. The dashboard clock read 11:30 p.m., and the world outside was a collage of shadowy fields and distant woodlands, illuminated only by the car's headlights. Michael glanced at the GPS, noticing with a frown that the signal flickered and then vanished entirely. "That's odd," he muttered, tapping on the screen. Sarah leaned over, her brow furrowing. "Maybe it's a glitch. We can't be too far from the B&B. But the comforting certainty of the modern world had slipped away, leaving them adrift on an unlit country road. The GPS remained obstinately blank, a silent rebuke to their reliance on technology. They continued, the car's headlight carving a path through the darkness. The road, less maintained and more narrow, wove through an increasingly dense forest. Twisted branches arched over the road like bony fingers, and the air grew heavy, as if charged with unseen energy. "Should we turn back?" Sarah's voice was tinged with unease. Just then, as if in response, a shape emerged from the gloom. A vast, ancient house, its silhouette stark against the forest backdrop. It stood like a sentinel, windows dark, and an air of long-forgotten grandeur about its ivy-clad walls. Michael, driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation, pulled the car to a stop. "Let's take directions. There has to be someone in there." They approached the house, the gravel crunching under their feet. The door, a massive oak affair with iron fittings, loomed before them. Sarah hesitated, but Michael, with a reassuring squeeze of her hand, knocked firmly. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway and a figure clad in antiquated garments, their face obscured by shadows. "Lost travellers?" The voice was oddly melodious, echoing slightly in the vast entryway. "You are expected." Michael and Sarah exchanged a bewildered glance. The house, with its air of bygone eras and the oddly dressed figure, felt like a step into another world, a world where GPS signals and city life seemed like a distant memory. As they crossed the threshold, a chill ran down Sarah's spine. Unseen eyes seemed to watch them, and the house's secret lay shrouded in the heavy silence. Little did they know their arrival at the forgotten abode was just the beginning of a journey into the unknown, a journey that would challenge their understanding of reality itself. As Michael and Sarah stepped in the grand foyer, they were enveloped by an atmosphere thick with the scent of old wood and a faint, indefinable spice. The house, a relic of a bygone era, whispered of secrets and stories untold. Their host, whose antiquated attire seemed straight out of a historical drama, he closed the door with resonant thud, sealing them away from the outside world. "Please come in. We rarely receive guests these days," the host said, leading them through the dimly lit hallway. His companion, equally strangely dressed, emerged from the shadows, her gaze fixed on the couple with an intensity that bordered on unsettling. Sarah clung to Michael's arm, her eyes darting around the hall. The walls were adorned with tapestries and paintings that were fascinating, yet disconcerting, scenes of celestial bodies in unnatural alignments, figures in fervent worship around ominous symbols, and landscapes that seemed not of this world. They were ushered into a sitting room where time appeared to have stood still. Antique furnishings, heavy drapes, and a crackling fireplace gave the room a strangely comforting yet eerie ambience. The couple sat on a plush sofa while their hosts occupied armchairs across from them, the flickering firelight casting dancing shadows upon their ageless faces. "Let us warm you with some tea," the female host offered, her voice a haunting melody. She poured a steaming, aromatic brew into the delicate porcelain cups and handed them to the couple. Michael and Sarah thanked them, sipping cautiously. The tea was unlike anything they had tasted before, rich and somehow invigorating. As they drank, they couldn't help but notice the unwavering stare of their hosts, dark, penetrating eyes which seemed to probe into their very souls. "Our family have lived here for generations," the male host began, his voice low and hypnotic. "We are guardians of traditions long forgotten by the modern world." Sarah, attempting to ease the tension, asked about the unusual decor. "Your home is quite unique. These symbols on the walls, are they part of your tradition?" The female host smiled, a cryptic expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes, they're the symbols of our devotion, our connection to the ancient powers of this land. You see, we follow the old ways, the ways of a deity long forsaken by others." Michael exchanged a glance with Sarah, a silent communication of mutual disbelief and growing apprehension. The conversation drifted to vague tales of the house's history, but their hosts deftly evaded any specific details about themselves or their practices. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, a sense of unease settled over the couple. The house, with its eerie artifacts, and the inscrutable gaze of their hosts, seemed to hold a mystery far beyond the ordinary. Michael and Sarah were unaware that they were already entwined in the web of ancient rituals and prophecies, with the night's shadow harbouring truths far stranger than any they had ever known. In the flickering light of the sitting room, the hosts introduced themselves with an air of solemnity. "I am Lucius," the male host declared, his voice echoing slightly in the still room, "and this is my sister Lilith." He gestured towards his companion, whose smile was as enigmatic as her gaze. "We are the devoted followers of Baphomet." Lucius continued, his eyes glinting with a fever that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "The great deity of the hidden knowledge and the guardian of the lost." The name Baphomet hung in the air, unfamiliar, yet heavy with ominous undertones. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his skepticism battling with the unsettling atmosphere of the house. Feeling a growing unease, Sarah excused herself. "Could I use your bathroom?" "Of course," Lilith replied, pointing down the hall. "It's the third door on the left." Sarah stood up and walked down the dimly lit hallway, the wooden floorboards creaking underfoot. The shadows seemed to shift around her, and an eerie feeling crept over her. She counted the doors, but distracted by her growing apprehension, she mistakenly opened the fourth door. What lay before her was a room resembling a perverse chapel. In the centre stood an altar, but everything was arranged in a disturbingly inverted manner. The cross was upside down, and the walls were adorned with paintings that depicted not saints or divine figures, but scenes of devilish creatures in various poses of power and dominance. As she stepped inside, intrigued yet terrified, the door closed behind her with a soft click. The room seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, the air thickening as if charged with an unseen presence. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow her every move, their gazes piercing and alive. From a shadowy corner of the room, a figure began to emerge. Its form was indistinct, but Sarah could discern the unmistakable outline of horns atop its head. A primal fear gripped her heart as she felt an overwhelming urge to flee. Just then, Michael's voice pierced the thick air. "Sarah?" He opened the door, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. Sarah ran to him, clutching his arm. "We have to get out of here. Michael, something is terribly wrong in this place." They turned to leave the twisted chapel, but in the doorway stood Lucius and Lilith, their expressions impassive, yet their smiles held a chilling edge of satisfaction. "Leaving so soon?" Lucius's voice was smooth, almost mocking. "You've only just begun to understand the truth of Baphomet's realm." Michael and Sarah stood frozen, realizing the depths of the nightmare they had unwittingly stepped into. The house, with its dark secrets and enigmatic hosts, were more than just an ancient abode lost in the Norfolk countryside. It was a gateway to a realm beyond their wildest fears, a realm where the boundaries of reality and nightmare blurred into a terrifying new world. "Michael, we're leaving," Sarah said, her voice trembling but resolute. Lucius, with an unnerving smile, replied, "If you can find the exit, you are free to leave this place." Determined to escape, Michael and Sarah began to retrace their steps through the dimly lit corridors. But the house, as if alive and mocking their efforts, had transformed. Corridors twisted in unfamiliar ways, doors led to different rooms, and the front door was nowhere to be found. It was as if the house itself was reshaping, keeping them ensnared within the walls. Confused and increasingly panicked, Michael poured open a door, only to find themselves back in the eerie chapel. But this time, the chapel appeared older, the walls more decayed, the air heavier with the scent of ancient incense. They turned to leave, and there in the doorway stood Lucius and Lilith, their dark eyes following the couple's every move, yet not uttering a single word. Sarah, grasping at any hope, chose another door. "This one," she said. But it led to the chapel again, even more ancient and foreboding. The paintings on the walls seemed to age right before their eyes, the figures within them contorting into more sinister forms. "What is happening?" Michael's voice was a mix of fear and frustration. "It's like a weird labyrinth." As they hurried through the shifting hallways, Michael noticed a room marked by two enormous doors, grander than any they had seen before. "That one," he said, pointing. As he reached for the door handles, Lucius's voice echoed from behind them. "I wouldn't go in there if I were you." Ignoring the warning, Michael pushed the doors open and stepped inside, Sarah close behind him. The room they entered was vast, a stark contrast to the claustrophobic corridors and the changing chapel. It was a grand hall, its walls lined with towering bookshelves filled with ancient tomes and artifacts. In the centre, a large circular table was covered with maps, scrolls, and strange instruments. The air in the hall was thick with an energy that was almost tangible, and the couple felt a profound sense of being at the heart of the house's mysteries. It was as if the room held the key to understanding the labyrinth, and perhaps the way to their escape. But as they looked around, they realized they were not alone. Shadows moved between the shelves, and whispers filled the air, hinting at the presence of unseen watchers. The sensation of being observed, analysed, and perhaps even manipulated was overwhelming. Sarah clutched Michael's hand. "What is this place?" Michael, his eyes scanning the room, replied, "I don't know, but it feels like the centre of everything here. Maybe the answer to getting out is here somewhere." As they tentatively explored the hall, the sense of an impending revelation grew, but the question remained. Would this room lead them to freedom, or further into the clutches of the house's arcane and sinister secrets? In the grand hall, Michael's eyes fixed upon a window, a glimmer of hope in their entrapment. "There!" he exclaimed. "A window means a way out." They rushed to the window, hearts pounding with the prospect of escape. But as they peered through the glass, their hopes were dashed. Instead of the familiar Norfolk countryside, a vast, infernal landscape stretched before them. A red sky bled over a horizon consumed by fire, a hellish vista that defied reality. "I don't understand," Sarah whispered, her voice a mix of fear and disbelief. Turning to further investigate the room, they found themselves not in the hall, but back in the chapel. Now more decayed than ever, paintings were peeling off the walls, and cobwebs draped over every surface like shrouds. Then, from the shadows, a voice, dark and powerful, resonated through the decaying chapel. "Welcome, my children." A figure began to emerge, commanding and terrifying. First the horns, curved and menacing, then the head of a goat, eyes burning with an otherworldly intelligence. The body was humanoid, powerful and imposing, with wings that brushed the ceiling and legs like that of a goat. "I am Baphomet," the figure declared, its voice echoing off the ancient walls. Sarah and Michael stood frozen, their minds struggling to comprehend the being before them. "Do not despair," Baphomet continued. "As my followers, you have nothing to fear. You need only know that you are now and forever my servants." The reality of their situation dawned on them with crushing weight. The house, the labyrinth, Lucius and Lilith, the chapel, all were part of a grand, sinister design, orchestrated by this ancient deity. Michael, mustering his courage, spoke. "We are not your followers. We just wanted a weekend away. We don't belong here." Baphomet's laughter, deep and resonant, filled the room. "You may not have chosen this path, but it has chosen you. Your arrival was not by chance. It was destiny." Sarah, tears brimming in her eyes, clutched Michael's hand. The escape they sought seemed more unattainable than ever. Trapped in this nightmarish reality, they faced a future bound to the will of a deity as ancient as it was malevolent. As Baphomet's presence loomed over them, the couple realized that their journey into the heart of darkness was only just beginning. Whether they would find a way back to the world or be forever ensnared in Baphomet's grasp was a question that filled them with dread. The only certainty was that their lives had been altered by their descent into the abyss. Michael's voice pierced the heavy air. "Run!" In a burst of adrenaline, they fled through the chapel doors and into the twisting hallways. As they raced through the labyrinth, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and desperation, they stumbled into a grand dining room. There, as if awaiting their return, were Lilith and Lucius. A grand table, set with an array of tea and an elaborate spread of food, stood before them. 2 empty chairs seemed to beckon them. "Come, sit. It's all too much for you. Let me explain," Lucius said, his voice soft, yet laced with an undeniable authority. "There really is nowhere else for you to go," Lilith added, a hint of resignation in her tone. Reluctantly, Michael and Sarah took their seats, the surreal nature of their situation leaving them feeling drained and disorientated. Lilith handed them a newspaper, the front page emblazoned with a shocking headline: "Couple die in car crash on Norfolk roads." Below was a picture of their car, unmistakably smashed and mangled. "It's okay, my dear," Lilith reassured Sarah, whose eyes were wide with disbelief. "We are not your enemies, but your guides." "Let us help you," Lucius chimed in. "Baphomet is a kind and generous master. He takes care of his children." The couple exchanged a look of confusion and panic. Sarah's voice trembled. "What are we going to do?" Michael, his resolve hardening, replied, "We are getting out of this nightmare. I'm not buying this for 1 second. It's a trick." Despite the newspaper's chilling proclamation, Michael refused to accept their fate as dictated by the strange, dark world they had been thrust into. The surreal experience, the cryptic words of their hosts, and the haunting visage of Baphomet all seemed like pieces of a macabre puzzle that was too sinister to be real. "Listen," Michael said to Sarah, his voice low and urgent. "We can't let fear paralyze us. We have to keep looking for a way out, no matter what they say or what illusions they throw at us." Sarah nodded, her resolve bolstered by Michael's determination. They stood up, pushing the chairs away, ready to face whatever twisted reality lay ahead. Lilith and Lucius watched them, their expressions unreadable. The air in the room thickened with anticipation and unspoken secrets. The couple knew their journey through this nightmarish realm was far from over. Every step, every decision brought them closer to confronting the truth of their situation, and perhaps to finding a way back to their own world. Michael's voice was firm, laced with a mixture of anger and defiance. "I don't know what game you're trying to play, but we're not falling for it." Lucius and Lilith merely watched them, their faces devoid of emotion. With determination, Michael grasped Sarah's arm, and they marched down the hallway. "There has to be a way out. This has to be a trick," he insisted, his eyes scanning for any sign of escape. Sarah, her face etched with fear and anxiety, followed closely. The surreal nature of their situation was overwhelming, but Michael's resolve gave her a flicker of hope. Suddenly, Michael's attention was drawn to a door they hadn't noticed before. "The basement," he murmured, a hint of hope in his voice. They descended the stairs, their footsteps echoing a dark, damp space. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they realized the room was empty, save for a faint glimmer. "Look there!" Sarah exclaimed, pointing to a crack in the wall where a sliver of light seeped through. Michael, fueled with a surge of hope, threw his shoulder against the crack, widening it enough for them to squeeze through. "I knew it," Michael breathed, a sense of triumph in his voice. "Let's get out of here." They clambered through the cracked wall, emerging into an open expanse, but their relief was short-lived. They stood in a desolate landscape under a red sky, surrounded by fire as far as the eye could see. "No," Sarah whispered, her despair creeping into her voice. They turned to go back, but the crack in the wall had vanished, replaced by the same fiery expanse. They were trapped, with no sign of the house or any way back. Then, echoing across the vast emptiness, came Baphomet's voice. "At last, you are home." They looked up to see Baphomet, his figure towering, as tall as the sky. His presence was overwhelming, a force that seemed to consume everything around them. In that moment, something shifted within Sarah and Michael. Their eyes turned pure black, their expressions empty, as if their very souls had been drained from them. They stood, motionless, their wills seemingly eroded by the immense power of Baphomet. The reality of their situation became painfully clear. There was no escape, no trick to unravel. They had been drawn into a realm far beyond their understanding, a realm where Baphomet reigned supreme. As they stood there, under the gaze of the deity, a chilling realization settled in their hearts. Their journey, their struggles, their hope for escape, all had been futile. They were now a part of Baphomet's world, a world where their old lives were but a distant memory, and their new reality was an eternal servitude under the shadow of the ancient deity. The fiery landscape around them was not just a prison, but their new, inescapable home. And if you're still looking to fulfill your thirst for more horror, don't forget to check out this next video, unless of course you're frozen with fear already.